and the omnibus. So I was forced into the Archers when I was a child. And look, it's come back to bite me later on.
I'm awash with the stuff.
The Archers is the world's longest-running radio show, with more than 15,000 episodes broadcast. Despite being a rural flavour show, The Archers is recorded in the heart of the UK's second-largest city, Birmingham.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're looking at Ambridge. Things have gotten pretty messy there.
Yeah, that protest at the Borsich water meat plant, it's really escalated.
Exactly. We're talking threats, damage to property, and even, well, worries about food contamination. It's serious stuff.
And for this deep dive, our sources are basically audio clips from the Archers. So we're getting it straight from the people involved, hearing their immediate reactions as it all unfolds.
Right. So our mission today is to kind of unpack all that, figure out the key events, get the different perspectives.
And see what the real conflicts are here, what's driving it, and what the fallout might be for Ambridge.
Yeah, from the protest itself to the motivations and the impact on everyone. Okay, so let's get into it. The immediate aftermath sounds pretty chaotic.
It does. We hear Vince talking about a physical confrontation. Freddy apparently got threatened with a broken bottle.
Wow. And Freddy himself.
Well, he actually admits butting the protesters. So, it sounds like things got physical on both sides before the police stepped in and used handcuffs.
Okay. And it wasn't just random people, right? They identified a leader.
Yeah, Ellen Archer apparently spotted the leader, a woman named Rashelle, on CCTV from a cafe nearby.
Huh. So Rashelle might be known around there, or maybe to the police already.
Possibly. And then there's the whole contamination worry at the plant itself. They've got a team investigating that right now.
Which leads to the shutdown, I guess.
Exactly. Borsich Water, the abattoir, is closed for 4 days. That's for a deep clean and a full investigation by the Food Standards Agency.
4 days is a big deal.
It is. And they've recalled all the products shipped out since Rashelle first started working there. That just shows how seriously they're taking the contamination risk.
Yeah, the economic impact alone for a place like Ambridge, that's significant.
Definitely. So you've got violence, potential crime, this big disruption. To really get a grip on it, we need to hear how people are actually seeing this.
Right. Like Vince, you mentioned him earlier. He just calls the protesters nutters, doesn't he?
Yeah, pretty much. He's just trying to stop them working. It's a very direct take. Maybe just sees it as part of the job's hazards, almost.
Kind of frames them as outsiders, maybe. Whereas Freddy, he saw it differently.
He did. He called the protest carefully planned. He thinks it was organized, deliberate, and he sounds worried about what happens next.
Which makes you wonder if maybe people suspected something was brewing.
Could be. Then you get this really intense scene between Rex and Rashelle. He calls her Rel.
And he's furious, right? Feels totally betrayed.
Absolutely. He thinks she deliberately deceived everyone, especially since she just started working at Borsich Water.
But what does Rashelle say to that? Does she admit it?
Well, initially she claims she didn't know the specific plans. Said she found out on a, quote, group chat.
Which sounds a bit convenient.
Rex certainly thinks so. He accuses her straight up of using the community's respect for her mother to gain trust. That's a heavy accusation.
Wow, yeah. Using family ties like that.
And then Rashelle sort of pivots. She doesn't really deny the accusation about her mother, but she starts talking about the ethics of it all. Animal agriculture.
Ah, so she brings up her experience working there.
Exactly. Says working at the abattoir changed her. She claims she saw things with me own eyes that were concerning. She even mentions an elbow injury she got there, though it's not totally clear how that connects.
So her time inside the plant was maybe the catalyst for her, changed her perspective.
It seems like a key factor, yeah. Regardless of what she knew about the protest details beforehand, that first-hand experience seems to have really fired up her ethical concerns.
It gives her argument a different weight, even if people hate the tactics used.
Right. It makes you think about the impact of working in that kind of environment, too.
Then there's Chelsea and Helen talking about it. What's their take?
Well, first off, they're just relieved no one got seriously hurt, physically.
Okay, that's understandable.
But Chelsea quickly calls the protest tactics reprehensible and counterproductive. She doesn't think it helps their cause at all.
Does she have an alternative idea?
Interestingly, yes. She wonders aloud if filming inside an abattoir wouldn't be more effective in putting people off meat, rather than, this kind of disruption.
That's a classic debate in activism, isn't it? Strategy versus disruption.
It is. And she questions their principles too, like, what about the potential harm from contaminated food? Doesn't that contradict their non-harm stance?
Good point. And she mentioned something about impatience driving things.
Yeah, she suggests maybe impatience is why tactics are escalating. She references past stuff at Borsich Water, implying this isn't the first conflict.
And maybe people feel like less extreme methods just aren't working fast enough.
Exactly. That feeling of urgency, that you need to do something more drastic to get noticed and force change. We see that in lots of movements.
Now, seemingly out of left field, there's this chat between Pat and Neil about someone called Reginald D, a war hero.
Yeah, it seems totally separate at first glance. They're talking about his bravery saving kids from a river, flying in bomber command. They even mention old photos with a land girl named Wander and Peggy looking young.
So, how does that fit with the protest drama?
Well, I think it provides this really interesting contrast,
Yeah.
While Ambridge is dealing with all this division and anger.
This story reminds you of a different kind of community spirit, heroism.
Precisely. Reginald D. Rave represents selfless courage. Ordinary people doing amazing things. It's like a counterpoint to the current conflict.
Yeah.
Thinking about unsung heroes, it makes you consider what bravery looks like in different situations.
It's a powerful contrast. One story about conflict tearing things apart, another about courage holding things together.
Yeah.
It makes you think about what a community values.
Mm-hmm. And then we circle back to Rex and Rashelle for a second conversation.
Yeah.
And this one is, well, quite revealing.
What comes out this time?
Rashelle really opens up. She admits she's known the leader, Saskia, for years. Describes this incredibly close bond. Says Saskia was more of a mother to her.
Okay, so there's a deep personal connection there. Loyalty.
A very strong one. It maybe explains some of her actions beyond just, like, ideology. It makes her seem more vulnerable, perhaps.
And then she drops another bombshell, right? About the group.
Yeah, this is huge. She says she was actually kicked out of the group before Christmas.
What? Kicked out?
Yep. And she heavily implies that getting involved in this protest, this specific action, was her way of trying to get back in favor with them.
Whoa, okay, that changes things. So it wasn't just about the cause, it was also about belonging, getting back into the group.
It really complicates her motives, doesn't it? That need for acceptance, for validation from this group seems like a major factor. It's not purely about animal rights.
That need to belong can be a powerful driver. And doesn't she say something else surprising? To Rex?
She does. Right in the middle of all this, she confesses she has feelings for him. Says you can't help who you fall in love with.
Seriously. While facing potential jail time and his anger, that's a lot.
It is. But then, almost immediately, she pivots back again. Back to her core beliefs, animal liberation, fighting climate change. She says these are her driving forces.
Even knowing the consequences, she mentions prison.
Explicitly acknowledges prison as a possibility. But she stands by her convictions. It shows how strongly she holds those beliefs, even with the personal risk.
And her plan now.
She says she's going to spend the weekend with her kids, Noah and Harper, and then hand herself into the police.
Wow. That really brings home the personal cost, doesn't it? For her family.
It really does. So putting all these pieces together, the core issues become clearer.
You've got this fundamental clash over the ethics of farming animals, obviously, and the activism around it getting really intense.
Definitely. And a real tension between different ways to try and make change happen. Direct action versus, well, other methods.
Plus the damage within the community itself. The broken trust, especially for Rex.
That feeling of betrayal seems huge. And we also see the very real personal costs when people act on deeply held beliefs like this. Rashelle facing prison, her relationships fracturing.
And that whole aspect of group dynamics, leadership. Saskia's influence on Rashelle seems critical.
Absolutely. How group loyalty and that need for acceptance can shape what people do, sometimes with really damaging results for everyone else.
So let's try and sum this up. Our deep dive shows a protest in Ambridge that spiraled, leading to violence, contamination scares, major disruption.
Mm-hmm. And the reasons behind it are complex. Yes, strong ethical beliefs about animals, but also personal struggles, the need to belong, even romantic feelings mixed in.
We've heard such different views, too. People feeling threatened and betrayed by the disruption.
And others, like Rashelle, absolutely convinced that this kind of radical action is the only way forward.
And that story about Reginald D, it provides that wider context, right? About different kinds of courage, different ways people contribute to the community.
Yeah, it's a really useful parallel to consider.
Which leads us to a final thought for you, the listener. Think about the complexity of trying to create change. When does that passionate belief cross a line? When do actions become, well, harmful or just don't work?
And how does a community like Ambridge even begin to deal with these kinds of deep internal conflicts over values and actions? How do they heal that trust?
And maybe think about the different kinds of courage out there, the dramatic, like Reginald D, but also the quieter, everyday courage of sticking to your principles, even when it's incredibly difficult. Lots to think about. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.
So, what are you doing now?
Just getting ready for the next episode. Just moving mics around.
So, what do you do?
I do the spot effects on the archers.
Are you what we call Foley then?
Kind of. Yep.
Okay. And these are all part of the paraphernalia of production.
Yep. That's the ball bar.
This one.
Yep, that's...
I mean, Hayley so wanted to be in their own place when their baby came. So, during 2 months, not much chance of that now. But I mean, it would have been a stretch for them financially, mind you. Oh, I just wish there was something practical I could do to help them get on.
I think The Archers has had this immense popularity over the years, basically because it has always very accurately reflected the reality of life and living in a rural community at whatever